So I have a lot to do in a limited time to do it in. So I haven't checked all my emails, but I need you to set up something where we can have a weekly podcast. That's the best use of our time. And making quick videos just to get things off of my chest is also a good use of my time. The truth is not a bad thing. The truth is not a harmful nor a bad thing, nor can it be a harmful or bad thing. I cobbled together 10 reasons why the United States is not a Christian country. And I think the best one I put first is that the Treaty of Tripoli stated that we're not a Christian country. I've had debates with monumental dipshits on Facebook about this who, through no fault of their own, they think we're a Christian country because that's what they were taught in grade school. They think the Pilgrims are the same thing as the founding fathers. And one idiot, I actually had to stop and explain to him how logic works. I had to explain to him, I called it Logic 101. And that if you have an opposing viewpoint that is contrary to accepted reality in academia, and historic books are gone over by peer review process, which is part of the scientific method, a peer review process. So if you're going to have to, for you to prove, you're presenting an argument contrary to the accepted belief. So you have the burden of proof. So these fucking dipshits that would say, "Hey, we're a Christian country, it's what I believe," prove I'm wrong. That's not how it works. Someone making a contrary claim has the burden of proof. People don't understand how logic and reason works, and they're the ones that are telling me that I'm wrong when there's a strong likelihood that they're high school dropouts. So, without getting too worked up, and in the interest of getting this off my chest, I'll give you this analogy. I could claim that Santa Claus exists and tell you that you have the burden of proof to prove that he doesn't exist. See? You couldn't do that. You can't prove a negative. Well, some people say they can, but it's a Herculean effort to prove a negative. Someone making a positive claim on something has a burden of proof to prove that. See? If you have the belief that we're a Christian country, you have the burden of proof to make that, because that's not, well, first of all, it's not true, and there's a mountain of evidence that I have shown you that is not true, which you have ignored, Tim. So, without jumping around too much, let's stick to the analogy. If I said, "Hey, Santa Claus exists," and challenge you to prove it, that he doesn't exist, you really couldn't do that. It would be impossible. You could put all the money into flying over the North Pole and saying, "Look, there's no workshop down there," and I could always come up with something. I could always say, "Well, he's hiding." And you could even have a submarine go down there and say, "Look, there's no workshop. Santa Claus doesn't exist." And I could go. It's limitless how I could go. I could say, he's an interdimensional being, and so you can't. So you still haven't proved anything. So that's just how logic and reason work. If it even works in this Christian thing, I haven't thought it out yet, but I can try to do it now. We live in a society where the DNA evidence is considered incontrovertible. If people are both exonerated from death row and put on death row and sentenced to death based on DNA evidence, the DNA evidence says that the DNA evidence shows incontrovertible proof, and I'll get back to this in a moment. It's demonstrative and incontrovertible, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a second. That we share a common ancestor with other apes. And by the characterization in zoology and in biology, we're apes. We're still apes. And the evolution is an ongoing process. Now, if you say it's not, you have the burden of proof to prove that it's not. And you can't do that because whatever theory comes along in biology, we know that that theory is not going to replace evolution. Because the challenges, the number of challenges against evolution that have been done in an attempt to prove its falsehood, the number is so great. I heard the number one time. It's in the tens of thousands or beyond. And it has been relentless ever since it was proposed. And not once has it failed. Not once. So to say that it's a theory and not a law, you are attempting to play games with language to try to make a convincing point, not to fool anyone else. You're trying to fool yourself. Now, before Josana went off to Brazil, the results of me pondering your comment that you said nothing I could do to change your faith. Well, that's what a Democratic libtard in 2020 said to me on Twitter. He had exhausted, or actually say, yeah, he had gone through all the propaganda of why he was a Democrat and why Democrat was better and why Trump was bad. He went through all of it. I debunked all of it. And by the way, you should Google Bradolini's law, which I'll get back to in a minute. But I debunked all of that, and his conclusion was, well, there's nothing I can say to change his mind. That person's existence is worthless in society. His very life has no value or meaning at all, even to himself. So for you to say nothing I could change nothing I could say would change your faith, does that mean incontrovertible proof you would reject? If so, that doesn't say anything about you as a Christian, but it says a lot about you as a man. Do you understand? If you're willing to say that you are willing to believe something that you know in your brain is not true, then you living with yourself is a self-imposed hell that you brought on yourself. And I can't rescue that from you. I can't rescue from that. But you have a responsibility as someone who believes in the truth to rescue yourself from that. I would be giving you a great disservice by not telling you this. And I would be in a state of conflict, thinking that and knowing that what you have told me contradicts yourself. Because if God is the God of truth and Satan is the king of lies, then accepting a falsehood over what your brain knows is not true, you are not being a good Christian or person. Now I'm going to go over that National Public Radio article in greater detail and in greater depth, because there's a follow-up story that is personal that happened after I achieved that knowledge that the NPR story presents. And it is one of the stories that's happened in my life where the adage, the truth is stranger than fiction, can be applied. When I was staying with our cousin Connie, one day she told me, Bill, come with me to watch my granddaughter's recital. She called it recital. So let me cut to the chase. What this is the only time in my life where my depression was so great that I lost consciousness. I wasn't sleepy or anything, just the depression of what I was witnessing was so astronomically insurmountable, monumental, that I blacked out and lost consciousness. Now, this is a true story, and you can verify it. You can contact Marianne, who can ask Connie about it, that she had to reach outside the pew and pull me back into the pew. And I don't know how she would, I don't know if she would remember it or how she would perceive it, but I lost consciousness and blacked out of overwhelming depression. I couldn't take it. And I'll tell you what happened that I couldn't take. And why, by the way, I get so worked up about this. And why there is nothing, if I can't get worked up about this, there is absolutely nothing in the universe worth getting worked up about. So I went to Connie's granddaughter's recital. It wasn't what I would call a recital. It was sort of a graduation from preschool. These Lutherans had put their sons and daughters into preschool to be in the form of daycare. And when they got old enough, they were to give a performance that they had rehearsed to the rest of the church. And it was this enormous Lutheran church. Lutheran. What a coincidence. So it was this enormous thing. And I told it to a friend of ours who drove us to the airport. He said, "You mean like the Globe Theater?" Yeah. And I said, "Yeah." There was balconies upon balconies all kind of tiered around. It was colossal. And what they did is these nice, well-dressed Christians came out and did a little performance. The performance was very rehearsed. And the essence, the main topic of the performance was a proclamation and demonstration that they had been born into sin, they were sinners, and that they know their only way of salvation was to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And this is in light of what you should have already clicked on about the NPR report that uses DNA evidence from evangelical colleges and biology departments in those colleges to confirm against their will, against the Christian will of the biologists, that Christianity can't be true because there was no such thing as a Adam and Eve, and thus no such thing as original sin, which the Apostle Paul, if I'm not making a minutia mistake, proclaims is the reason for Jesus Christ. It is God so loved the world that he gave his only son, so that if we believe in, we have salvation. So the whole point of Christianity is to save us from this original sin. And if the original sin never happened, then there's no need for a savior. And here's something else. Tim, listen to me. All great truths start as blasphemes. I don't know if George Bernard Shaw said that, but some great thinker said that. And I am sick and fucking tired of living my life knowing that I'm ahead of time. That I don't fit into this primitive bullshit that we're all living in, and I'm enlightened, and crap assholes fight me because they refuse to be enlightened, that I'm trying to do them a favor, not me. I'm not improving myself. I'm being altruistic to look out for my fellow man, and people give me bullshit for it. Now, these well-intentioned Christians in their nice, dolled-up suits, standing on stage and applauding these indoctrinated souls that they had fucked their lives over. Oh yes, you're good Christians now. Tim, if you take a child and couple morality with religion, what the fuck is going to happen when they become an adolescent and they reject that doctrine, that religion? They're going to jettison their morality with it. There is a good reason why the vast majority of people on death row are Christians. They're not atheists, they're Christians. There is a good goddamn reason why the founders of the United States knew that deism was a good thing, and they knew that they were going to found a good country on that principle. And I've given you a 10-point doctrine about why we are not a Christian country. And if you think that's bad that we're not a Christian, then your brain is not hooked up right, just like our brother Jim.